Hey, welcome to my channel. And this is a Bible study for Tuesday, the 14th of February, 2023. And I call this the godly response to loss. And it's from the book of Job, and I'm going to bounce around a little bit in the book of Job. I was thinking about it, loss comes to all of us. And losses can be tough. I've had mine. You have probably had yours. If you haven't, you will. If you live long enough, you're going to go through losses. Over 40 years ago now, a young couple in the church I served as pastor were pregnant with their first child. So excited. Great. These are great people. They love the Lord. They served the Lord. They were in a singing group with my wife. Great couple. He was in the Navy. Superb young couple. And they were so happy to be looking forward to their first child. There was great joy. And then I think it was about at 7 months of pregnancy, the baby had died in the womb. And in those days, what happened next was she had to give birth to the baby dead. And as I recall, she held it for a while, held the baby for a while, with her husband in the room with her. And they mourned. We had a funeral for the baby, okay? And you know what their response, that was great grief in that loss. But more than that, they worshiped God. They understood the hand of God. And got through it, okay? They got through it. And that brought me to Job. And I want to just walk through the first chapter of Job. You want to talk about loss. Here's some loss. Job chapter 1. Just going to walk through the whole thing. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. Godly guy. You don't have to be a rascal to suffer loss, okay? He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. Richest dude in the town, in the area, in the whole country, okay? His sons used to take turns holding feasts in their homes, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. Party time, When a period of feasting had run its course, Job would send and have them purified. He was worried about them. He'd send and have them purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom. He's a godly man. And saying, if my kids blew it, I'm going to offer a sacrifice and cry out to God on their behalf. Probably the right thing to do. That's the kind of guy Job was. Really good man. One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth and going back and forth in it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Man, I tell you, that's the way we ought to be. Fear God and shun evil, okay? That's the kind of guy Job was. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied. Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has. He will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, very well then, everything he has is in your hands, but on the man himself, do not lay a finger. In other words, you can wreck everything he has, but don't lay a finger on him. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and carried them off. They put your servants to the Lord, and I'm the only one who has escaped to tell you. In other words, took all his livestock. They stole all his livestock, his wealth, okay? And killed a bunch of his servants. Sabaeans. They were not his friends. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the fire of God fell from sky and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I'm the only one who has escaped. More of the stuff gone. Sheep are gone. Servants are gone. Fire from God, from heaven. Like, lightning or something. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I'm the only one who has escaped. Lost all his camels. Losing everything. While he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they're all dead. And I'm the only one who has escaped to tell you. 10 kids. 10 kids at a party, all killed. That's a loss right there, folks. That's a loss. That's what he went through. At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. He was mourning. That's his way of mourning. He's mourning the loss of his wealth and 10 children, 7 sons and 3 daughters. And then listen to this. Then he fell to the ground in worship. He fell to the ground in worship and said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. Talk about loss. Job went through it. Lost all his kids and all his wealth. Boom! Gone in one day. Pretty tough day. Talk about getting up and having a bad day. And why? Well, the Lord said, Satan, you can hammer him, and I know he'll be true to you. And his response to his loss, and this is profound, he worshiped God and would not blame God. I have been with people when they went through losses, and how could God let this happen to me? Folks, that's not the right idea. Now, if you feel that way about God, you should tell God that he can handle it and he'll help you with it. But he worshiped God and he praised God because God's God. Now, he went through this back and forth with some of his buddies who were trying to convince him that this all happened because he was a big-time sinner. That's basically what they were saying. And one of them's name was Bildad. And Bildad was telling him that he's a big sinner and the problem was his sin. And in chapter 13, 14 and 15, I want to read that. Why do I put myself in jeopardy and take my life in my hands? He's saying, he's saying to his friend Bildad, why am I not worried about this? Okay. And then verse 15, this is what he says. He's talking about God. Though he slay me, yet will I put my hope in him. I will surely defend my ways to his face. This does not happen because I'm a bad guy. But I will put my hope in God, even though he slays me. Though he slay me, yet will my hope be in him. So his responses to his loss, 3 responses: worship, praise, and hope. How did it turn out for old Job? The worship, the praise, the hope. Job 42, 10 through 17. Let's walk through those verses. After Job had prayed for his friend, these friends gave him a hard time all this time. He prayed for his friends. The Lord made him prosperous again and gave him twice as much as he had before. All his brothers and sisters and everyone who had known him before came and ate with him in his house. They comforted and consoled him over all the trouble the Lord had brought upon him, and each one gave him a piece of silver and a gold ring. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the first. He had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. And he also had seven sons and 3 daughters. The first daughter he named Jemimah, the second Keziah, and the third Keren Hapuk. Nowhere in all the land were there found women as beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father granted them an inheritance along with their brothers. After this, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their grandchildren to the fourth generation. And so he died old and full of years. Lord blessed Job ×2 from what he started with after he went through all of his loss. I think a lot of it has to do with how he responded. How did he respond to his loss? Worship, praise, and hope in the Lord. And we're all going to go through loss, folks, all of us. And if we can learn to respond, it's tough, okay? I've had losses. Learn to respond with worship, praise, and hope, and you'll come out blessed. What happened to that young couple that I told you about at the beginning? Well, this is probably, 41, 42 years ago, a long time ago they went through that. They're still together. They have 4 grown children and grandchildren. They responded with worship, praise, and put their hope in God, and God blessed them. When you go through tough times, the godly response to loss, worship, praise, and hope, and God will bless your socks off, okay? Hope you'll do that and learn that lesson, and I will talk to you soon.